So today we're going to look at some of the tools that we use in Photoshop and looking at shortcuts and how to find out shortcuts. So what we're going to do now is I'm just going to open up one of my pictures on the desktop, and as per our previous screencast, we can do it loads of different ways. We can either click on open and then go to our browser and see which one we actually want to open. Or I can simply go onto my home screen here and one click on the picture and it'll open in Photoshop. So the toolbar is basically all over here on the left hand side. Now you can have it as one straight line or you can have it as two, just depending on the way you click these two little arrows here. I normally have it like this, so whichever way suits you. So the tools that we're going to look at, I'm just going to show you a few little things about it. As we bring our cursor over the actual tool, it'll tell us what the tool does. So you can see that this one is called the Move tool, and the shortcut for it is V. So basically, if I had this tool selected, but I wanted to select the Move tool, I'm going to press V on my keyboard now, and you'll see that the Move tool has been selected. If you look at the tools in general, you'll actually see that there's a little arrow beside some of them, and there's some without arrows. Most of them have them. So what that indicates is that there's another tool underneath this one. So how do we find that? If we just press, click and hold our mouse down or on our keypad, trackpad, it'll indicate the other tool. So you can go and click on that. The other tools in the toolbox underneath that selection tool. So the illustration here gives quite a good illustration, or tells you what it'll actually do. The Move tool is really handy. When you're in layers, it's very handy for moving different layers around. We'll be talking about that later on. And it's also sometimes, if you go looking for some tools, you actually, or to be able to do some manipulations in Photoshop, you actually have to have the Move tool selected. But we'll look at that as we're going along. So let's have a look at the next one. The next one is Selections, and it's the elliptical marquee tool. And as you can see, it's used for selecting different parts of an image. So, and the shortcut for it is M for marquee. Now we have a couple of different options. So if I click and hold on that, you'll see that we have a rectangular marquee. So that means I can click and drag and just select any shape I want, whether in a rectangular form. Command and D will actually get rid of a selection. So if you make a mistake or something like that, so we can make it any shape we want. Command D, we can get rid of the selection, or I can make it really, really long and make my selection, and Command and D will get rid of the selection. Now there are other options up here as well. So let's have a little look at this. So this one here is, if I bring our cursor up over it, it's just make a new selection. This one is add to a selection, and I'll illustrate it now in a wee moment. This one is subtract from a selection, and this one is intersect with a selection. So let's try the first one. So if we try the first one, that's basically what we've been talking about already. If I do this one, which is add to, and I draw another bit here, you'll actually see that it adds on the extra bit to that selection. If we go now and we go to the subtract one, we can take away a little piece of that selection. And if you look at the cursor, see the crosshairs there, you'll actually see that there's a minus beside it. So let's take this bit away. So you can play along with the selection, whatever you wish to do. And then if we do this one, the intersection, we can actually see it's only where the two other selections cross that you can then select that area. So there are various different options. Command D again will get rid of it. And for the moment, what we normally do is deal with just making the selection. We have a few others as well. We go back to the elliptical one. In some of the assignments, we'll see that we can make all different elliptical shapes, but we can also create perfect circles. And the newer versions of Photoshop change, and so here's one where we can make a perfect circle. So to make a perfect circle, let me do that again, is hold Alt and Shift, click and then drag, and you're dragging from the center out, and it'll make a perfect circle. And we can move that around wherever we want. Now there are different assignments on this in selections. It'll probably be your first assignment, and we will run through these in greater detail at that stage. So the first thing two things that we've learned so far. We bring our cursor over the tool, it'll give you an illustration as to what the tool does, and it'll also give you the shortcut for that tool. The little arrow to the right hand side of the tool, if we click on our mouse pad or our trackpad and hold it down, you will see that you have all of these different options available underneath that one tool. So we go into our lasso tool, or our polygonal lasso tool. Again, you'll see that there's an arrow here, so we have a selection of different lasso tools. So if we go across to the one I call the cowboy one, again, we still have these options up here. So if we go back to just make a selection, this one is add to, as I said, this one is subtract from, and this was the intersect. So with the cowboy lasso tool, as I call it, or just a lasso tool, you can literally, it's a freehand. So you can create any shape you want and select the area within that shape. So we can go Command D and get rid of that. If we go for the polygonal lasso tool, you'll see that the illustration of it is that it's good for in and around straight lines, for selecting areas with straight lines. Most of the tools are specific. Some of them are good for colors, some of them are good for straight lines, some of them are good for high contrast images with edges and that kind of thing, but we'll be doing that as we go through Photoshop. So with this, you can just click, drag, click, drag, click, drag, click. And as you come to the end of the selection, you'll see a little zero appear right beside the illustration or the actual tool. That means that you're right back at the start, and it now completes the selection. So Command D gets rid of that selection. With this one here, we have quick selection tools. Now, there are, again, there are three different tools in this selection. Or if we go for the object selection tool, and I bring my cursor back over it just for the illustration, just hang on a second, we go back in there. You'll see that that Photoshop will select an object within your selection. Let's have a wee look and just see, will it select this person's face. So I'm going to do that, and let's release. Sometimes it struggles, but it did okay on that in that case. Let's Command D and let's see if I can select our hand this time. And you see down here, if we zoom in on it a wee bit, you'll see that it has some issues. So sometimes the tools work perfectly, sometimes they struggle a little bit. So that in your selections assignment, you'll be selecting the best tool for the best job. So that's the object selection tool. Let's go into this one. So the quick selection tool. Now let's look at the illustration. So this one is good for selecting items with good strong contrast, or a contrast between the background and the foreground. So let's have a wee look. So what I'm going to do is select this lady's coat. So I'll click and drag, and you see the way it's done it really quickly. The reason being is that it has a strong edge all along between the wall color and the actual color of the coat. So it works perfectly in that case. But let's just see now if it does the same with our hair. Now you see it's struggling. So if we go around, now it's around her face, it's not too bad, but when you start here, you can see that it's not accurate, or it's not close along her hair. So it doesn't suit an object that doesn't have a defined edge on it. And if we look back, then we go Command D to get rid of that selection. And the next one is our Magic Wand tool. Now, our Magic Wand tool, if I put the illustration back up here, is good for selecting colors, like strong colors. So let's just have a look at this one. If we bring it over here, and you see this triangular area here of the wall, if I go and click on that, not too bad. It's quite acceptable. If I add here, or another click, it'll add on to it. I'm actually on the add to the selection section here. Let's go up here. It's adding a little bit more. You can see if I zoom in a wee bit that it has different areas here that's not selected. So I'm just going to click on them. But as you can see, it's gone into the green now. So we have to be really careful, and we pick the correct tool for the correct item. So if I go Command D, if you look up here, you see this tolerance? Well, that's the kind of the shade. So if I go and I go 1 there, that means that I'm going to be really specific on the shade of that I'm going to sample. So let's have a wee little look, and we're just going to click down here, and we'll just pick selection, and you can see it's literally just picked one little spot down there. So if I go and I change that to 20, and I go Command D and press again, now you can see that I have a broader range of tones, and it's selected a bigger area. So let me put that now up. We had it initially at 35, so if I go 40, let's go and see. It's selected a good bit, but it's gone into our hair. So these are things that you're going to have to just keep in mind, and there are ways around it, but we'll leave that until we're actually going into the assignment. So Command D, and we get rid of that. So let's have a look at this green down here. This green patch could be, it's quite solid in color. There's not many shades in it. So let's just see. I'll put this back to 35. 35 tends to be a good tolerance for it. So let's click in here, and lo and behold, you can see that it has selected that area without any issues whatsoever. The main issues that we have up here is that there is a shading, that here we have more of a highlight, and as we go up the stairs you can see that it's getting darker.